this video, we're going to be talking Marvel Snap, the series drops, some new cards. Is it going to affect what you're going to be doing in the token shop and what you want to get there? Let's jump in. So a lot of the videos I've been doing recently are about tokens, spending, what cards to get, the best cards to focus on. I want to talk a little bit about the series drops that you can kind of see going on over here. If you're not aware, we are getting some series drops happening from 4 to 3. We got Helicarrier, Agent Coulson, and Maria Hill. And then from 5 to 4, we got Silver Surfer, Darkhawk, Null, and Sentry. Now, I will say, when I look at all these cards, there's 4 that I'd be interested in maybe. I think Agent Coulson, Surfer, Darkhawk, and maybe Null. Sentry, I understand there's a way to play that with like Viper and all that sort of thing, but I'm not a fan of that card at this point. Helicarrier could be decent, maybe. Depend if you combo it right with maybe a Hela Sif to cut it up and then bring the cards on. There's something there. Agent Coulson I think is great. Darkhawk, though we're not seeing as many of Darkhawks these days, and Surfer with the nerf. Null is still great, you know, if you can sort of pair him with Galactus or something along those lines. So let's look at these series drops real quick. So the first one, like I said, Maria Hill, she adds a random one cost card to your hand. Okay, that's all right for 2. I mean, it's still going to be 3 overall energy to gain how much power. She's okay. Agent Coulson, this is probably the one I like the most out of this, where it's going to add a random 4 or 5 and 5 cost card to your hand. You can use this for a multitude of purposes, even in MODOK / Hela type decks, where you can pull a bunch of stuff in. Zabu, even, where you're getting an additional 4 cost card. I like that, where maybe you could do this and then use that later with a Zabu effect. And then Helicarrier, when you discard this from your hand, you add 3 random cards to your hand. So you just don't know what they're going to be. They can be anything. Now, sometimes you might get a benefit out of it, sometimes you might not, but you want to make sure this gets discarded at a decent spot where it's like where you get either lucky with a Blade, Hellcow, Moon Knight type situation, or which is the same as waiting for your Sif to make sure that this gets snapped, and then maybe you can play those cards, but you don't see this very often. The series 5 to 4s here, these are the better ones. Silver Surfer, again, just feeding all those 3 power cards. I think he's just a great card. Darkhawk, the opponent for everything in your opponent's deck. Again, we went over this a little bit in a different video, but I think that there are ways to continue to use this card. It is a very popular card. Not seeing it as much, but it is a solid card. Sentry, nobody's using this that I'm aware of, that I've seen. I think just adding that -8 to 1 spot. I mean, maybe if that's ever like the specific location that says like the lowest power wins, okay, but it's just so rare, it just doesn't make sense. And then Null for all the points that you get when you destroy all the other cards. So I think these are decent drops. I like them. Now, the question is do I now want to wait to specifically, save my tokens so that I'm looking at something with these, or opening my reserve boxes? That's the part where, it depends. Like, so Absorbing Man is a great card in general. He was on sort of my honorable mention list, but I'm not going to get him at this point. I'm still looking at the collection levels. I'm still opening these. Now, am I thinking about maybe wanting to save these because, I want to try to get Maria Hill, Agent Coulson, or Helicarrier a little bit more? No, I'm not holding back for anything there. And then when I get to the higher levels here, where I get maybe a little bit higher chance of getting some of these, I could see it a little bit, maybe. I mean, the series 4 card chances is 2.5% for both of these. So as far as those moving around, it's not really a change. The caches, they do have a high chance to get a series 3 card, but I'm not going to hold back on these for either way. Now, so when I'm looking at this and I'm going, all right, well, the chance to get a series 5 card is 0.25%. Should I hold off on holding these? No, I mean, like, yeah, I'd like to get a Surfer, Darkhawk, or maybe a Null, but I have so many pool 3 cards that I'm not super stressed about getting those. So cool drops, but I'm not necessarily changing anything that I'm doing to, as far as spending and getting these caches and reserves open to get these. Now, last but not least, I wanted to hit a couple of the new cards things. So Marvel Snap Zone, this is a great site for news and all that sort of thing. On the front section here, they've got some stuff where you can see new cards. Obviously, we've got MODOK, Zabu, Ghost, which is already, I'm starting to see out there a little bit. Ongoing, your cards are always revealed last. Their on-reveal abilities happen last. So I'm curious to see. I mean, this is a 1-cost card. It's very interesting. I've only faced one of these so far. It didn't factor into the game at all. I think they escaped pretty early. But a question is, what happens when you have 2 of these? How does that work? Is it who played first, who played second? Now, sometimes you might not want their on reveal first. Like, I like to use Juggernaut with things. Well, I'd prefer that they don't show up. Or Arrow. I want to pull their card over first. Maybe they've got an arrow and I want to pull their arrow over first before their arrow pulls me over. So you've got to really think about this card. It's an interesting card. I'm not going to go aggressively hard after it yet. I'm sure there are certain deck types that this will 100% you'll want for, and that's sort of the point of the game, right? Stature, which should be coming out apparently in a couple days here, costs 1 if your opponent discarded a card from their hand this game. That is a great card given what's going on now. I think a lot of people are going to want to try to get this card. I think it's phenomenal, especially if when it goes down to cost 1, something like Killmonger is not going to be able to take it out. I don't know exactly how that'll work with this card, but we'll see. So I think this card is one that you're going to definitely want to look for. It could have potential in literally almost any deck. It's like, all right, somebody discarded, boom. You know, it's like, okay. Now, my wonder is like, so what could you pair this up with, like a Moon Knight and discard your opponent's card and then make this cost 1? That's a great use as well. So I'm digging that card for sure. Kang, the next card, which will be in here in about 10 days. On reveal, it's a 5/0. On reveal, look at what your opponent did, then restart the turn without Kang. So it's like, well, hold on a second. So it's basically a time travel card. So this is interesting. So this is sort of like a free 5-cost card. I'm expecting that when you do this and it restarts the turn, you get that 5 energy back. If that's the case, this card is almost worth having in almost every single deck, as long as it's not costing you a critical spot from another card. That's I like this a lot. It's very Daredevil-esque in that regard. Now, Daredevil costs 2, so when you're thinking about it, you know, it's a tough call on exactly what you want to do here. Now, the Daredevil sort of gives your opponent the idea of what you're doing, so sometimes they'll destroy it, sometimes they'll adjust what they're doing, whereas you drop Kang on turn 5, they don't know. So you do it and then it restarts it. It's like, great. Now, what happens if both people with Kang? Okay, well, then nobody knows anything. Now, that's going to be kind of fun. But I think this is a great card. It's interesting. And then the last one they've got on here is Nimrod. When this card is destroyed, add a copy to each other location. For a 5-cost card, I think that's interesting. I think you're going to see a lot of... Well, actually, you can't use it with Galactus because then one spot is going to be filled. But that would be an interesting spot. Maybe a Destroyer. I think this would be interesting for a Destroyer. You come in, you destroy your stuff and pop it down and then put a null in one of the other spots if you can. Wait, a Destroyer costs 6. How are you going to use this card turn 5? Tough call. So, I mean, you're going to have to save your Carnage or your Deathlock to be able to use that at one point. And it makes sense to be able to do that. I think it's interesting. But it's going to be a fun card to see. Now, some cards that they don't show here that I do want to show that they've got in a different spot. After Nimrod, these are unsure dates. Kitty Pryde, you can return this to your hand and to gain +1 power. I like that a lot. Luke's Bar, that's awesome. And then Falcon. So, I mean, but besides that, I'm not sure how much use this will get. We'll see. I think it's definitely interesting. I'm not sure a ton of people will have it in there, but it's interesting. Negasonic Teenage Warhead, when a card is played here, destroy this card and that card. Now, I think this is interesting. If I saw this on the field, I would just use one of my 1-cost cards, throw it in, and just take this one out. But I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's going to be interesting. It certainly can semi-lock down a location, but only for a short amount of time. And if your opponent is saving some low-cost cards for later in the game, this isn't going to impact much. But if you're facing opponents that don't, that could be pretty solid. Master Mold is a very interesting card. The first thing I thought of when I saw, well, it adds 2 Sentinels to your opponent's hand, and it costs 2 energy. So it's super cheap. It adds 2 Sentinels to your opponent's hand on reveal. When I saw this, the first thing I thought of is, well, this is a Dracula counter. I just did that video the other day, and I'm like, well, here you go. You drop that on your opponent late in the game, where they've maybe, you know, after turn 5 or something, you've got a cheaper card, and so you've drew this and a 4-cost card on turn 6. Dracula's got 2 Sentinels to deal with in that deck. I could see that happen a little bit, or even later if, you know, somehow you're hoping they don't have a MODOK in there, or you're trying to jam up their hand a little bit. I don't know. It could go both ways depending on if they've also got a Morbius on the field or not, but I like that. And then the last one they've got in here is the Living Tribunal. This is a 6-cost card, but it only has 4 power. At the end of the game, split the total power evenly among all your locations. I think this is a very interesting card. I like it a lot in the regard that you could sort of play some mind games with your opponent some, and then maybe like build up 1 lane a lot or 2 lanes like semi and leave another one alone, and they think they're going to get it. And then all of a sudden you drop this on there and it just spreads everything out. So I think I could see a lot of uses for this card. I think it's fun. They're all going to be Series 5. We'll see when they're coming. Are these going to be Season Pass cards? Maybe. But interesting to theorize about. So I'd love to hear what you guys think of these cards, what your plans are for those series drops. Let me know in the comments below, or there's a Discord link in the description below. If you come over to the Discord, let us know. Let me know what you're thinking about with these cards, what your plans are. We love chatting and theorizing about stuff. And if this video was helpful, think about hammering down the like button. If you want to share with your aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, appreciate it. Until next time, hope you have a wonderful day.